The alarm clock buzzed, and Taylor Harris groggily reached out from under her blanket to hit the snooze button. 5 more minutes, she muttered, but she knew that wouldn't happen. 5 minutes would turn into 10, and then she'd be late for work. With a sigh, she pushed herself out of bed. The apartment was cold. The heater had been broken for a week, but she couldn't afford repairs. Instead, she boiled water on the stove for steam and piled extra blankets on her younger brother, Mark. "Time to get up, Mark," Taylor called softly, knocking on his door. There was a muffled groan from inside, followed by the sound of rustling blankets. Mark emerged a minute later, his messy brown hair sticking out from under his worn-out glasses that were held together with tape. "Morning, sis," he yawned, sitting down at the kitchen counter where Taylor had already made cinnamon toast. She poured him a glass of milk, and while he ate, she quickly sipped her coffee and looked over the pile of bills on the counter. Rent was due next week, and Mark needed new glasses. The note from his teacher had mentioned how he was struggling to see the board. It wasn't the first time. "How about you?" she asked Mark, her voice light. He smiled as he bit into his toast. "I dreamed about Dad's pancakes," Mark said. "The ones with the chocolate chips that look like smiley faces." Taylor's heart tightened. "Maybe this weekend," she replied, though she knew she didn't have enough money for extras. But Mark's face lit up at the suggestion. "We'll use the last of the chocolate chips," she added, knowing she had to make it work for him. After breakfast, Taylor rushed through the rest of the morning routine. She made sure Mark packed his bag and brushed his teeth before giving him lunch money. "Mrs. Garcia will pick you up from school today," she reminded him. "I'm working the late shift, then heading to my other job." Mark groaned, rolling his eyes. I know," he said with a smirk. "Don't work too hard." Taylor squeezed his shoulder. "I won't. Have a good day at school." The two of them stood at the bus stop together, watching as the bus pulled away with Mark. As she waited for her own ride, Taylor's thoughts turned back to their small apartment and their struggles. Riverbrook wasn't a rich town anymore. It used to be back when the paper mill was open, but that had been years ago. The town had changed. When Taylor arrived at Sunnyside Diner, the early morning rush was just beginning. She waved to Mr. Grayson, the diner's owner, who was already flipping on the grill. "Morning, Taylor," Mr. Grayson said, glancing up from behind the counter. "Morning," Taylor replied, tying her apron around her waist. "Is the grill ready for another long day?" Mr. Grayson chuckled. "It always is. Can't get through the morning without Hank and his pancakes." Hank, the short-order cook, had been there for decades, and the breakfast rush was always a flurry of orders. Eggs, pancakes, hash browns, coffee. The morning passed quickly as Taylor served coffee to Mr. Peterson, a retired teacher who liked his eggs over easy, and Mrs. Wellington, who always asked for 2 creams in her coffee. Taylor was efficient, moving between tables and chatting with the regulars. She made small talk, learned about their days, and gave out a lot of smiles. The conversations weren't just about food, they were about connection. As she wiped down the counter around 10 o'clock, the bell above the door jingled. A man entered. His coat, once brown, was now worn to gray. His jeans were ripped at the knees, and his shoes were falling apart. His face, hidden behind a scruffy beard, seemed weary, like someone who had seen too much. "Take a seat anywhere you like," Taylor called out, smiling warmly. She noticed a few customers exchange glances at his worn-out appearance, but she refused to let it bother her. The man shuffled to a seat at the far end of the counter. Taylor quickly grabbed a menu and walked over to him. "Anything to drink?" she asked. "Just coffee," he replied, his voice surprisingly soft. As she poured his coffee, she noticed his hands shaking slightly. She set the coffee in front of him and asked, "Anything to eat today?" The man hesitated for a moment, reaching into his coat pocket. He began counting out a handful of coins, carefully placing them on the counter. "Just the coffee," he said, pushing the coins forward. Taylor looked at the small pile of coins. Her heart went out to him, and without thinking, she smiled. "Actually," she said, "we're running a Tuesday morning special. Coffee comes with a full breakfast. Eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast. No extra charge." The man looked up at her with clear blue eyes, a hint of surprise in them. "A special?" "Yep," Taylor nodded. "Very popular around here. How do you like your eggs?" "Over medium," he said cautiously. "Perfect." Taylor wrote the order down and passed it to Hank. She knew there was no Tuesday special, but she wasn't about to let this man leave hungry. As she continued working, she watched him sip his coffee slowly, savoring it. He didn't seem to be in any rush. Every now and then, his eyes would drift to the old pictures on the walls of the diner, black and white photos of Riverbrook in its heyday. When the food was ready, Taylor returned with the plate. "Here you go," she said. "Enjoy." The man's eyes lingered on the plate for a long moment. 2 perfectly cooked eggs, crispy bacon, golden hash browns, and toast with butter. He stared at it for a moment, clearly overwhelmed by the generosity. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "This is very kind." "It's nothing," Taylor said. "Just the Tuesday special." She smiled at him, giving him privacy to eat. When he finished, Taylor returned to clear the plate. "How was everything?" she asked, wiping down the counter nearby. The man hesitated, then said, "Best meal I've had in a long time." She smiled. "Glad you liked it." She had learned over the years that sometimes people didn't need charity, they needed respect. As the man reached for the coins to pay, Taylor waved her hand. "It's covered. Part of the special." The man looked at her for a long moment, as if processing her kindness. He nodded slowly, his eyes softening. "Thank you again," he said. "Anytime," Taylor replied. He stood up, adjusting his coat, and turned to leave. "I'll be back," he said softly. "Not many people see me anymore, but you did. Thank you for that." With that, he left. Taylor stood there, staring after him, feeling something stir inside her. She didn't expect anything in return. She had simply treated him with dignity. Taylor stood behind the counter, wiping down the last few spots on the table where Hector had sat. The morning had been unusually busy for a Tuesday, with a steady stream of regulars and a few newcomers. She had just finished preparing a fresh pot of coffee when the bell above the door jingled again, signaling the arrival of a new customer. Taylor glanced up, ready to greet them with her usual smile, but the words stuck in her throat. Standing in the doorway was a tall man, dressed simply in a black t-shirt and jeans. He didn't look out of place in the diner, yet something about his presence seemed different. Even without the designer clothes or expensive accessories, there was an aura about him that made the room go silent. He paused for a moment, surveying the space as if deciding where to sit. Then, as if hearing the collective intake of breath from the customers, he turned his attention to Taylor. She recognized him immediately. It was impossible not to. The unmistakable face of Elon Musk. A collective murmur spread through the diner, but no one dared to approach him. Mrs. Bailey, who had been sitting with her friend, dropped her fork, while Mr. Peterson nearly spilled his coffee. Hank, the cook, peeked out from the kitchen, his spatula frozen midair. Elon smiled, almost as if he were used to this sort of reaction, and stepped further inside. He made his way to a booth near the window, away from the other customers, who were now sneaking glances in his direction. "Morning, sir," Mr. Grayson said, quickly stepping forward with an outstretched hand. "Welcome to Sunnyside Diner. It's an honor to have you here." Elon shook Mr. Grayson's hand with a small, friendly smile. "Thanks. I've heard good things about this place," he said, his voice quieter than Taylor expected. There was a distinct South African accent, one Taylor recognized from his interviews. Mr. Grayson nodded enthusiastically. "Well, we pride ourselves on serving good, hearty meals." He gestured toward Taylor. "She'll take care of you. Best waitress in town, bar none." Taylor's face flushed with surprise at the compliment, and she quickly finished wiping the counter near Hector's seat before grabbing a fresh menu. Her heart was racing. This was Elon Musk, for crying out loud, the founder of Tesla and SpaceX. And here he was in Sunnyside Diner, acting as if he were just another customer. "Good morning," Taylor said, her voice steady despite her nerves. She walked over to his booth and placed the menu in front of him, followed by a glass of water. "Can I start you off with some coffee?" Elon looked up at her with a friendly expression. "Good morning, Taylor," he said, glancing at her name tag. "I'll take it black, please." She nodded and turned to get the coffee, trying to keep herself composed. As she poured, she noticed his gaze shift to the door through which Hector had left earlier. For a split second, she wondered if Elon had noticed him too, but she quickly dismissed the thought. He had probably been too busy watching the town around him. "Here you go," Taylor said, setting the coffee cup in front of him. "Would you like a few minutes with the menu?" Elon glanced at it, then looked back at her with a small smile. Actually, he said, I'm not sure what's good here. What would you recommend? Taylor smiled, relieved that he seemed like just another customer with normal breakfast questions. Well, the pancakes are pretty famous around here, she said. But if you're really hungry, the Sunnyside special is a great choice. Eggs, bacon or sausage, hash browns, and toast. Elon's eyes flickered for a moment, and Taylor thought she saw something in his expression. But just as quickly, the look was gone. That sounds perfect, he said. I'll have the Sunnyside special. Over medium eggs, please, and bacon. And if you've got wheat toast, I'll take that. Taylor wrote the order down, her mind still racing. How could she not be nervous? But she reminded herself that above all, he was just another person in need of a good breakfast. She handed the order to Hank, who looked over at her, eyes wide with disbelief. I swear, Hank, if you start serving him with extra special attention, I'll have to pull you off the grill, she muttered under her breath, half joking. Hank nodded, but Taylor could tell he was still processing the surreal turn of events. The morning went on, with Taylor moving from table to table, serving coffee and chatting with the regulars. Mrs. Bailey was taking an excessive number of photos, while Mr. Peterson seemed to be deeply engaged in some quiet conversation with the businessman at the far end of the room, undoubtedly about Elon's surprise visit. Even the group of retirees at the back had quieted down to whisper among themselves. Taylor did her best to focus, but her mind kept drifting back to the man sitting in the booth. Elon Musk. She had seen him on TV and in interviews, but in person, he was just another guy eating breakfast. Still, the situation felt strange. Why would he be here? What brought him to Riverbrook? Did it have anything to do with the old factory site? Her thoughts were interrupted when the food was ready. Taylor took the plate to Elon's table and set it down in front of him. Here you go, she said with a smile, trying to mask the lingering nerves. The Sunnyside special. Can I get you anything else? Elon looked up from his plate, which was piled high with eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast. He smiled. This looks great, thank you. He picked up his fork, then paused. I'm curious about something. Taylor raised an eyebrow. Sure, what's on your mind? He glanced around the diner, as if taking it all in. How long has this place been here? It has character, he said. You don't find diners like this anymore. Taylor smiled, feeling a sense of pride in the diner she had worked at for years. Sunnyside's been around for over 40 years, she explained. Mr. Grayson's father opened it back when the paper mill was still running. It's kind of a local institution now. Elon nodded thoughtfully. I can see why. It feels like home. He took another bite of his eggs, savoring the meal as he glanced at the old photos on the wall again. That's one of the things I love about small towns, he said, almost to himself. The authenticity. It's rare. Taylor was about to ask him more about why he was in Riverbrook when she noticed his attention shift to Hector's empty seat. There was something about the way Elon looked at the spot that gave Taylor pause. Could it be that he was aware of what had happened earlier that morning? Had he seen the act of kindness that had played out just before he arrived? Elon finished his meal, and Taylor returned to clear his plate. He looked up at her as she approached. That was fantastic, he said, smiling. Best breakfast I've had in a while. Glad you liked it, she replied, trying to remain professional, even though the encounter was still surreal. When she returned with the check, Elon handed her his credit card without hesitation. As she processed the payment, she noticed something unusual. He seemed deep in thought, watching the other customers and the quiet life of the diner unfold before him. As he signed the receipt, he smiled at her and said, "Thank you, Taylor. That was exactly what I needed this morning." Taylor felt a strange sense of connection in that moment, between the man who had seen so much and the diner that had seen so little. Sometimes, she thought, even the smallest interactions could lead to something significant. As Elon left, Taylor's thoughts lingered on the fleeting conversation. There was something about him, something more than just his fame or fortune. And though she didn't know what it was, she had the distinct feeling that this morning, this simple breakfast, would change everything. The rest of the morning passed in a blur, as it often did at Sunnyside Diner. After Elon Musk had left, the excitement in the air was palpable. The customers who had been whispering and taking photos now eagerly discussed his visit. The regulars couldn't stop talking about how amazing it was that someone as important as Elon Musk had chosen their little diner for breakfast. Some speculated he might be scouting the town for a new business venture. Others joked that maybe he had come for the pancakes. Taylor did her best to stay focused, refilling coffee cups and taking orders. Mr. Grayson came out from the kitchen, clearly riding the wave of excitement. "That was something, huh?" he said with a grin. "A lot of new customers today. I've got a feeling the rest of the week's going to be busy too." "Yeah," Taylor agreed, though part of her couldn't shake the odd feeling that had settled in her chest since Elon left. What was it about that encounter that felt so significant? She had served plenty of customers before. Some kind, some rude, some easy to forget. But Elon Musk, he was different. There was something about the way he had looked at the diner, the way he had seemed so at ease despite his fame. It was almost as if he saw something that no one else did. Around 10:30, the door jingled again, and Taylor glanced up. A familiar face entered the diner. Hector, the man who had come in earlier that morning, counting pennies for his coffee. He was still wearing the same worn coat, but there was something different about him. He looked cleaner, his hair was combed back, and his beard was trimmed neatly. He seemed more put together, more dignified. He moved to the counter, choosing a stool near the back. Taylor felt a wave of warmth wash over her as she walked over to greet him. "Good morning, Hector. It's good to see you again," she said, offering him a friendly smile. He nodded, returning her smile, but there was a hint of hesitation in his eyes. "I was wondering," he began, his voice quiet, "if you might need help with anything around here. I noticed there's a lot of litter in the parking lot. I could clean it up in exchange for a cup of coffee." Taylor was taken aback by his offer. It wasn't just the fact that he was offering to help. There was something different about him today. He didn't seem defeated or invisible as he had earlier. There was a glimmer of confidence in his posture, a sense of pride in his offer. Mr. Grayson, who had been watching from the kitchen, stepped forward. "We could use some help with that," he said, surprising Taylor. "And there's always odd jobs around here. How's your plumbing skills?" Hector looked surprised by the question, but stood a little straighter. "I'm good with my hands," he said. "Used to be an engineer. I can fix most things." "Well," Mr. Grayson said, "the bathroom sink has been leaking for weeks. If you can fix that, I'll give you breakfast and lunch, plus $20 for your time." Hector blinked, clearly taken aback by the offer. "You'd do that?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. Mr. Grayson nodded. "You've got a skill that's worth more than you know. Get that sink fixed, and I'll pay you what I can." Hector didn't need any further encouragement. "I can do that," he said. He took the tools Mr. Grayson handed him and headed toward the bathroom, his movements confident, steady. As Hector got to work, Taylor moved between tables, but she kept an eye on him. It was incredible to see how much he had changed in just a few hours. There was something about him today. He wasn't just a homeless man anymore. He was someone with knowledge, with experience, with skills. She couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in him. After everything he had been through, he was still willing to work, still willing to try. Around lunchtime, Hector finished the repairs on the sink and tightened a few wobbly tables in the diner. Mr. Grayson came out from the kitchen to inspect his work. "You did a great job, Hector," Mr. Grayson said with genuine admiration. "I've got more things that need fixing if you're interested." Hector nodded, still looking a little overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness. "I'd be happy to help," he said. As Hector sat down to eat his breakfast, just as he had earlier, but now with a sense of quiet pride, Taylor noticed that the other customers weren't looking at him with the same disdain they had earlier. They weren't whispering or glancing away. They were looking at him as if he were a part of the diner's community, as if he belonged there. That's what kindness did, she thought. It made people feel like they were worth something again. When the morning rush slowed down, Taylor found herself sitting next to Hector during her break, sipping her coffee. She had to ask. "So, Hector," she said gently, "what did you do before all of this? Before you ended up here?" He looked up at her, the faintest trace of sadness in his eyes. "I was an engineer," he said quietly. "Worked in energy storage. It was good work, innovative work, for a company called Quantum Storage." He paused as if measuring his next words carefully. "But when my wife got sick, things changed. Treatments weren't covered by insurance and we had to drain our savings. I took out loans. When she passed away, the company downsized, and suddenly I found myself competing for jobs against people half my age. No one wanted to hire me. Taylor's heart ached for him. She couldn't imagine how hard it must have been. Losing everything, only to have the world keep moving forward as if nothing had changed. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Hector shrugged, trying to brush it off. "You become invisible after a while. I've been out here on the streets for almost 8 months. It changes you. But what you did for me this morning, it mattered. It gave me a little bit of my dignity back." Taylor smiled, her heart full. "You're still an engineer, Hector," she said firmly. "None of that changes just because of what happened." A small smile tugged at the corners of Hector's lips. "You remind me of my daughter," he said quietly. "She always believed in me too." Taylor's heart fluttered. "Maybe you should try reaching out to her," she suggested gently. "I've tried," Hector said, his eyes clouding for a moment. "But after everything that happened, I was too ashamed to let her see me this way. Maybe one day." Taylor didn't push him further, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Hector deserved a second chance, that everyone deserved a chance to rebuild their lives, no matter how far they'd fallen. As Hector finished his breakfast, Taylor felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had worked hard today, fixed things that needed fixing, and had a hot meal in front of him. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "Thank you," Hector said as he stood up to leave. "I won't forget this." "You're welcome here anytime," Taylor said with a warm smile. As Hector left the diner, Taylor felt a sense of hope rise inside her. For the first time in a long while, she felt like things could change. One act of kindness at a time. The rest of the day at Sunnyside Diner felt almost surreal. The excitement from Elon Musk's visit hadn't completely faded, and the energy in the diner remained unusually high. Mr. Grayson was in an upbeat mood, constantly looking out the windows to see if any more people were stopping by, attracted by the gossip that was quickly circulating around Riverbrook. Taylor did her best to focus on the job at hand, keeping up with the breakfast and lunch orders. But in the back of her mind, she couldn't stop thinking about the events of the morning. It had been an unexpected start to the day, and she was beginning to wonder if it was all some kind of strange dream. Elon Musk had walked into Sunnyside like he was just another person in search of a decent meal. And even though Taylor had tried to treat him like any other customer, part of her couldn't help but feel that this was the beginning of something bigger. As the lunch rush started to quiet down, Taylor took a moment to glance at the pile of bills on the counter. She was trying to figure out how to stretch her earnings for the week when Mr. Grayson came over, looking more serious than usual. "Taylor, can I talk to you for a minute?" Mr. Grayson said, his voice quiet but urgent. "Of course, what's up?" Taylor replied, wiping her hands on a dish towel. He motioned toward the back office. "Let's step back here." They both moved into the small office behind the kitchen, and Mr. Grayson closed the door behind them. His face was drawn, and there was an edge of concern in his eyes. "Everything okay, Mr. Grayson?" Taylor asked, suddenly worried. She had worked at the diner for over 3 years, and in that time, she had come to see Mr. Grayson as a father figure. He always took care of things, always had a plan. But today, he looked different. He sighed and sat down behind his desk, running a hand through his thinning gray hair. "I've been putting this off for a while, but it's time to be honest with the staff." Taylor's stomach tightened. "What's going on?" Mr. Grayson paused, collecting his thoughts. "Business has been slowing down for years," he began. "Ever since the paper mill closed, things have been tough, but lately it's been worse. The building needs repairs, equipment's breaking down, and now the landlord is raising the rent next month. I can't afford it all." Taylor felt a knot form in her chest. Sunnyside Diner had always been the heart of Riverbrook. It was a place where people gathered, shared stories, and felt at home. The thought of losing it made her feel like something vital was being taken away from the town. "Don't say that, Mr. Grayson," Taylor said, her voice shaking a little. "We can figure this out. There's got to be a way to save it." Mr. Grayson's face softened, but he shook his head. "I've tried everything, Taylor. Cutting costs, working longer hours, even taking out a loan last year to cover some bills. But I'm running out of options." He leaned forward. "The truth is, we've got 3 months, maybe 4, if we're lucky. After that, I don't know what we'll do." Taylor felt the weight of his words settle over her like a heavy blanket. The diner was more than just a place to work. It was a part of who she was, a part of the fabric of Riverbrook itself. Losing it would be devastating, not just for her, but for everyone who had come to rely on it. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, looking down at the floor. "This place means everything to this town. How can we just let it go?" "We won't," Mr. Grayson replied firmly. "I'm telling everyone now so you have time to look for other jobs, just in case. But I'm not giving up yet." Taylor swallowed hard, her throat tight. She wanted to believe him, to feel like there was a way out of this mess. But the reality of the situation weighed heavily on her shoulders. "I'll help however I can," she said, her voice determined. "We can't just give up on Sunnyside. I'll figure something out. We always do." Mr. Grayson gave her a soft, appreciative smile. "That's the spirit. You remind me of your father. He never gave up on anything, not even when things looked impossible." At the mention of her father, Taylor felt a pang in her heart. Her father had been the type of man who always had a solution, who believed that everything could be fixed with hard work and persistence. She could almost hear his voice now, telling her to keep fighting, keep going, no matter how hard it got. "Thanks for telling me, Mr. Grayson," she said, her voice steadying. "I'll keep looking for a solution. We'll get through this." As she left the office, the weight of the conversation still hung over her. She had no idea how to save the diner or what to do about the mounting bills, but she couldn't let it go. She couldn't let Riverbrook lose this place. The next day, as she arrived for her morning shift, Taylor was still lost in her thoughts. The possibility of the diner closing was never far from her mind, but she had no time to dwell on it now. There were orders to take, customers to serve, and bills to pay. As she entered the diner, she noticed a small envelope sitting on the counter, addressed to her in neat handwriting. There was no return address, just her name. Curious, she picked it up and opened it. Inside was a check, made out to her for $10,000. Her heart skipped a beat as she stared at the amount. There was a note attached. "For your kindness and for keeping the lights on. A friend." Taylor's hands trembled as she held the check, the words of the note sinking in. She couldn't believe it. This was more money than she had ever seen at once. It was a small fortune for her family, enough to cover rent for months and to take care of a few of Leo's needs. But who could have sent this? Her mind raced. Could it have been Elon Musk? But why would he send this anonymously? Why would he pick her, a simple waitress in a small-town diner? As she stood there still holding the check, Mr. Grayson walked in, his eyes wide with surprise. "What's this?" he asked, looking at the envelope in her hands. I don't know," Taylor said, still stunned. "It was just here, for me." Mr. Grayson glanced at the check and then back at her. This is unbelievable." He paused, looking deep in thought. "There's no way this is a coincidence. Someone wants to help." Taylor felt a mixture of hope and disbelief. The check was a lifeline. It wasn't the answer to all their problems, but it was a start. As she slipped the check into her bag, she felt something stir inside her. Maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Maybe this was the moment when everything would change. The rest of the day felt like a whirlwind. Taylor couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious check that had shown up at Sunnyside Diner. She had tucked it safely into her bag, not sure what to do with it yet. The amount was overwhelming, and the note that accompanied it, "For your kindness and for keeping the lights on." A friend, only added to the mystery. Who would send her such a generous gift? Was it truly from Elon Musk, or was it someone else entirely? The morning passed uneventfully, with the usual regulars coming in for breakfast. But even as she served plates of pancakes and eggs, her mind was elsewhere. How could she use this money? What would it mean for her and Mark? And for the diner? Mr. Grayson seemed to be in a better mood than usual, even though he was still worried about the diner's future. The check, which he had seen when Taylor first received it, had obviously lifted his spirits. "This could buy us some time," he said with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Maybe we can fix up the building, replace some of the equipment that's falling apart. Heck, we could even get the place painted." Taylor tried to remain optimistic, but the reality of their situation still weighed heavily on her. Even with the check, it wasn't enough to secure the diner's future. They needed more than a temporary fix. They needed a long-term solution. The rent increase was coming, and the building still needed extensive repairs. It wasn't just about surviving. They needed to thrive. She knew she couldn't keep waiting for something to happen. If the diner closed, she'd be out of a job, and Mark's future would look even more uncertain. But then again, maybe that check was a sign. Maybe someone out there wanted to help Sunnyside Diner, and perhaps that could be the turning point they needed. The next morning, as Taylor arrived for her shift, the atmosphere in the diner was unusually quiet. The usual chatter and laughter from the regulars seemed subdued, and Taylor couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Her thoughts were still consumed by the check, the mysterious benefactor, and the future of the diner. But as she stepped inside, a strange sense of calm washed over her. Mr. Grayson was already behind the counter, sorting through paperwork. When he saw Taylor, he gave her a nod. "You got a minute?" he asked, his voice more serious than usual. "Of course," Taylor replied, feeling the weight of his tone. They moved into the back office, and Mr. Grayson closed the door behind them. There was a look of urgency in his eyes now, and Taylor felt a twinge of worry. "You won't believe what happened," he said, sitting down at his desk. "I got a call this morning. Someone from the Riverbrook Innovation Center reached out." Taylor's heart skipped a beat. The Riverbrook Innovation Center? That was the place Elon Musk was rumored to be building on the old factory site. "What did they want?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "They're offering us a chance to cater an event," Mr. Grayson said, his eyes wide. "A big event, a tech conference. They want Sunnyside Diner to provide lunch for 200 people. Taylor stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "Wait, are you telling me that Elon Musk's team contacted us?" She couldn't believe it. The thought that the diner could be a part of such an important event was both thrilling and terrifying. "Not directly, but they mentioned the visit from Musk," Mr. Grayson said. "They said that our food and the atmosphere here really impressed him, and now they want us to be a part of something big. The conference is next week, and they want us to serve lunch to the attendees." Taylor's mind was racing. This could be their big break, the opportunity they needed to secure the diner's future. But at the same time, she felt a wave of pressure. Could they pull it off? Could they handle catering for such a large crowd? They had never done anything like this before. "You think we can manage it?" Taylor asked, still uncertain. Mr. Grayson's face softened with a reassuring smile. "I think we can. Hank's been cooking here for 20 years, and you've got the experience running the floor. We just need to get organized. This is an opportunity we can't pass up." Taylor took a deep breath, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. If they could pull off the catering gig, it might just be the boost the diner needed. But there was still so much to do. "All right," she said, finally feeling the spark of determination. "Let's do this. We can make it happen." The next few days were a blur of activity. Mr. Grayson, Hank, and Taylor worked together to plan the menu and figure out how they would execute the catering. The Riverbrook Innovation Center had requested a variety of options, from sandwiches to hot entrees, and Taylor had to make sure everything was prepared in time. She didn't have much experience with catering for large events, but with Mr. Grayson's guidance, she felt confident they could pull it off. As the days passed, rumors about the conference began to spread throughout Riverbrook. People were excited about the possibility of a major tech event coming to town. The local news even covered the story, speculating that Elon Musk's company might be looking to build a new facility on the old factory site. For Taylor, the catering gig represented more than just a chance to earn money. It was a symbol of hope. If they could impress the Innovation Center's team, it might open doors to more opportunities. It could bring in more customers, more business. It could even be the lifeline Sunnyside Diner needed to survive. The day of the conference finally arrived. Taylor was up at the crack of dawn, getting the last-minute preparations in place. She, Mr. Grayson, and Hank had worked tirelessly to ensure everything was perfect. There was no room for mistakes. As they arrived at the conference venue, Taylor couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The Riverbrook Convention Center had been transformed for the event, with banners and displays showcasing cutting-edge technology. The smell of fresh coffee and the hum of excitement filled the air. Taylor and Mr. Grayson quickly set up their station behind the buffet table. The food was arranged in carefully prepared trays, ready to be served to the hundreds of conference attendees. As she glanced around the room, her heart raced. This was the moment. It wasn't long before Elon Musk himself walked into the room. He was accompanied by his team, looking calm and composed as always. He glanced over at the food table and gave a small nod of approval. "Everything looks great," he said to Mr. Grayson with a smile. "I'm glad we could work together on this." Taylor felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. The diner had come a long way from the days when she wasn't sure how they'd make it through the month. And now here they were, part of something much bigger than they ever imagined. The Riverbrook Innovation Center's tech conference was a resounding success, and Sunnyside Diner had played a key part in it. Taylor stood at the back of the room, observing the crowd as they eagerly devoured the food her team had prepared. The once quiet, humble diner now had the eyes of the town, and possibly the world upon it. There was an energy in the air, a sense that something big was about to happen. Taylor had never imagined that a simple breakfast, one that she had served to Elon Musk just days ago, could lead to an event like this. But here they were, and Sunnyside Diner was thriving in the spotlight. The conference attendees were impressed with the food, with the atmosphere, and with the story of how the diner had survived through tough times. Taylor felt a sense of pride swelling in her chest. She moved through the crowd, refilling drinks and offering small plates of finger foods. She couldn't help but notice the conversation swirling around her. People were asking questions about the diner, about the town, and about how things were going. There was an air of optimism, of new beginnings. As the event continued, Taylor couldn't ignore the feeling that something even more significant was unfolding. She'd heard whispers about the old factory site and the rumors that Elon Musk's team was scouting it for a potential new facility. The idea of a tech hub being built in Riverbrook was exciting, and it made her wonder if the diner might be part of a bigger plan for the town's revival. Around midday, the buzz in the room intensified when Elon Musk himself stood up to speak. The crowd grew quiet as he approached the podium, and Taylor found herself holding her breath, wondering if he would mention Sunnyside Diner or if he would acknowledge the small town that had so graciously opened its doors to him. "Thank you all for being here today," Elon began, his voice calm but commanding. "It's an honor to be in Riverbrook. This town, though small, has something that many larger cities don't. Heart. A sense of community that you can't find everywhere." The room was silent, hanging on his every word. Taylor could feel the eyes of the crowd shifting toward her, and she instinctively stepped back toward the catering area, not wanting to draw attention to herself. "Part of the reason I'm here today is because I believe in the potential of Riverbrook. I believe in the people here, and that's why we're moving forward with plans to build the Riverbrook Innovation Center on the old factory site. This place has been a hub of industry in the past, but it's time for a new era of innovation." There was a brief pause as the audience processed the announcement. Then applause erupted, filling the room with a surge of excitement. Taylor's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was what they had all been waiting for. Elon smiled, soaking in the applause. "But I'm not just here to talk about technology. I'm here because of the people in this room and the people I met earlier this week. A special place, a special community. I had the privilege of having breakfast at a local diner called Sunnyside, and I have to say it was one of the best meals I've had in a long time." Taylor's breath caught in her throat as he continued. "It wasn't just the food, it was the way I was treated, the kindness I felt from the staff, from Taylor Harris, the waitress who served me that morning. It reminded me that kindness, that human connection, is what drives innovation. It's what makes a community strong, and that's why we're here today." The crowd clapped again, but Taylor stood frozen, her eyes wide. Elon had just mentioned her by name. Her heart raced, and she tried to keep her composure. She felt the eyes of the crowd on her, but instead of feeling uncomfortable, she felt a sense of pride swell in her chest. "We're going to need places like Sunnyside to continue thriving as Riverbrook grows," Elon said. "I've spoken with Mr. Grayson, and we're making sure the town will benefit from this project. The Riverbrook Innovation Center will create jobs, but it will also support local businesses, and Sunnyside will be a part of that future." The applause grew even louder this time, and Taylor could hardly believe what she was hearing. It was like a dream. This wasn't just a fluke. This wasn't just about one generous check or one good meal. This was about a town, a diner, and a community that had found a way to rebuild together. Later that afternoon, as the conference began to wind down, Elon Musk's team approached Mr. Grayson and Taylor to thank them personally. Elon had already left for another meeting, but the impact of his words lingered in the air. The team seemed just as pleased with how things had gone as the attendees. "You all did a fantastic job," one of Elon's advisors said. "It's clear that Sunnyside Diner is a cornerstone of this community. We're excited to see how the Innovation Center will complement the growth here." Mr. Grayson beamed with pride. Thank you," he said. "We've been through a lot, but we've always made it work. This diner has seen the good times and the bad, and we're not going anywhere." Taylor felt the same sense of pride as Mr. Grayson. The diner was more than just a place to get a meal. It was the heart of Riverbrook, and now it seemed like that heart was finally getting the recognition it deserved. As the day came to an end and Taylor prepared to head home, she couldn't help but feel that something had shifted. Riverbrook was no longer the forgotten town it had once been. With Elon Musk's investment in the old factory site and the new Riverbrook Innovation Center on the horizon, the future looked brighter than ever. When Taylor arrived home, Mark was waiting for her, his face lighting up when he saw her. "How was it, Zoe?" he asked, using the nickname he always gave her. "Did they like the food?" Taylor smiled and sat down beside him. "They loved it, Mark. They really loved it." He grinned. "I knew they would. Sunnyside Diner's the best." "Yeah," Taylor said, hugging him close. "It is, and it's going to get even better." As she sat there with Mark, her mind raced with possibilities. There was still so much to do, so many obstacles to overcome. But for the first time in a long while, she felt like they were on the right path. The diner was safe for now, and with the new tech hub on the way, the whole town had a chance to grow and thrive. And maybe, just maybe, their simple act of kindness, offering a meal to a man who had nothing, had started it all. The next few weeks felt like a blur of activity. Riverbrook was buzzing with excitement. News of the Riverbrook Innovation Center's plans for the old factory site spread like wildfire. The idea that Elon Musk's company was investing in the town had stirred something within the community. There was a new energy in the air, a sense that Riverbrook could finally escape the shadows of its former industrial past and step into the future. For Taylor, the days felt busier than ever. She still worked her shift at Sunnyside Diner, but now there was a renewed sense of purpose. The diner was thriving with new customers, people from out of town who had heard about the tech conference and Elon's visit, as well as local residents who were starting to believe that Riverbrook might have a future beyond the fading memories of the paper mill. Taylor's days were filled with the usual rush of serving food and making small talk with customers. But there was a noticeable difference now. She wasn't just keeping things afloat anymore. She was building something, building a future, and that future was beginning to look brighter. On a crisp Tuesday morning, as Taylor entered the diner, she noticed a new face behind the counter. Hector was already there, wearing a clean shirt and a pair of well-worn jeans, looking more like a regular than the man who had walked into the diner a few weeks ago with nothing but the shirt on his back. "Morning, Hector," Taylor said, smiling. "You're looking good today." Hector smiled back, but there was something different about him now. He had more confidence, and it was clear he was no longer just trying to survive. He was living. "I feel good," he said, "and I've got news. I've been offered a full-time job at the Riverbrook Innovation Center." Taylor blinked, surprised. "Wait, what? That's amazing. What's the job?" Hector chuckled. "I'm going to be working in the energy storage division. It's what I did before, back when I was an engineer. They want me to help with their energy systems, batteries, solar power, all that stuff." "Wow, Hector," Taylor said, her voice filled with excitement. "That's incredible. You really did it. All that work and everything you've been through, and now this." Hector nodded, his smile a little more reserved now. "It's not just me. It's all of us. This town is changing, Taylor, and I'm lucky to be a part of it. I'm going to help build something that matters." Taylor felt a swell of pride in her chest. She had always known Hector had potential, but now he was getting the recognition he deserved. It wasn't just about the job, it was about the chance to reclaim his life, to be more than just the man who had fallen through the cracks. He was an engineer again, doing what he loved, making a real difference. But Hector wasn't the only one experiencing a shift in his life. For Taylor, things were beginning to come together too. The check she had received from the anonymous donor had given her the breathing room she needed to focus on the future. With the diner now thriving and the Riverbrook Innovation Center bringing jobs to the town, Taylor had started taking classes online to finish her accounting degree. It wasn't easy, balancing work and school, but she was determined. It was a far cry from where she had been just a few months ago, scrambling to make ends meet, barely getting by. Now she could look ahead, not just for herself, but for Mark as well. He had a future now. With the money from the check and the promise of more opportunities in town, Taylor was able to focus on making sure he didn't have to grow up in the same struggle she had faced. One morning, just as the diner was beginning to fill up, Mr. Grayson called Taylor over to the counter. He had a smile on his face, and she could see that something good was on the horizon. "I got a call this morning," Mr. Grayson said, his eyes twinkling. "That catering gig for the tech conference, it's led to something big." Taylor's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "We're in talks to be the official catering service for the Riverbrook Innovation Center," Mr. Grayson said, grinning. "They want Sunnyside Diner to handle all the events they'll be holding over the next year. Meetings, workshops, conferences, the whole shebang." Taylor's mouth went dry as she processed the news. "Wait, you're serious? This is huge. This could really set us up." "It's more than that," Mr. Grayson said. "It's about keeping this place going, not just surviving but thriving. You and we've always figured things out, Taylor, and now it looks like everything is falling into place." Taylor stood there for a moment, stunned. The diner would not just survive, it would grow. It would flourish. With the new business from the Innovation Center, there would be more jobs, more customers, more opportunities for everyone in Riverbrook. And it wasn't just about the diner, it was about the town. Just as she was trying to process everything, Hector walked over, looking as if he were about to burst with excitement. "I've got a call with the team at the Innovation Center this afternoon," he said. "They want me to lead a project to develop a new kind of battery. I can't believe it." Taylor smiled, her heart swelling with happiness for him. "You're going to do great things, Hector. I'm proud of you." Hector nodded, his expression softening. "I never thought I'd get another chance. I thought I'd lost it all. But now, thanks to the people here, thanks to you, I've got a future again." The two of them stood there for a moment, a sense of quiet understanding between them. They both knew how hard things had been, how far they had fallen, but now they were both rising again. And for the first time in a long time, Taylor felt like the weight of the world was starting to lift. The bell above the door jingled as another customer entered, but Taylor didn't move. Instead, she glanced around the diner. It was full, the usual customers mixing with a few unfamiliar faces. There was laughter, conversation, the clinking of silverware on plates. Sunnyside Diner was alive in a way it hadn't been in years, and she realized it wasn't just the diner that was changing, it was the town. Riverbrook was on the brink of something great, and she was right in the middle of it. For the first time in a long while, Taylor felt like everything was possible. The days following the announcement of the Riverbrook Innovation Center's plans were a whirlwind of activity. The entire town seemed to be in motion, eager to embrace the changes that were coming. The news about Sunnyside Diner catering for the Innovation Center's events brought in a whole new wave of customers, businessmen, tech developers, and even a few journalists who had heard about the diner's unexpected rise to fame. People were intrigued by the small-town diner that had caught the attention of one of the most influential figures in technology. Taylor worked tirelessly, managing the rush of customers and overseeing the preparations for the catered events. There was a sense of pride in every order she took, every coffee she refilled. She could feel the energy in the diner, the once dying place now pulsing with life and possibility. It wasn't just about food anymore, it was about the heart of the community. One afternoon, as Taylor was cleaning a table, a young man walked in wearing a sharp suit and carrying a briefcase. He had the look of someone who was either a business executive or an important client. He stopped by the counter, scanning the room before locking eyes with Taylor. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "Is this the Sunnyside Diner that Elon Musk visited a few weeks ago?" Taylor smiled, a little taken aback by the question. "Yes, it is." "You've heard about that, huh?" The man nodded. "I have. I've heard a lot about you, too." Taylor paused. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" My name's Patrick Sinclair. I'm with the Riverbrook Innovation Center, he explained. I was at the tech conference last month, and after hearing about your diner's involvement, I wanted to reach out. Taylor felt her pulse quicken. Oh, I see. What can I do for you? Patrick smiled and took a seat at the counter. Actually, I'm here because of the buzz that Sunnyside Diner has created. Mr. Musk has been incredibly impressed with the way you've been able to connect with the community here, and we think that's the kind of environment we want to build around the Innovation Center. Taylor blinked, unsure of where the conversation was going. That's great to hear, but how does that relate to me? Well, Patrick said, leaning in slightly, we're looking to partner with you and Sunnyside Diner in a more official capacity. We'd love to have you run the cafeteria for the entire Innovation Center. You'd be serving meals to our employees, our guests, and anyone visiting the center. It's a big responsibility, but it could really help solidify Sunnyside as a central part of Riverbrook's future. Taylor's eyes widened. You want me to run the cafeteria for the entire Innovation Center? She shook her head, trying to process the words. That's huge. I mean, it's one thing to cater events, but this would be something entirely different. We believe you're the perfect fit, Patrick said with confidence. You've shown that you can create a space that feels welcoming and personal. And that's what we need. Someone who can keep the heart of Riverbrook alive within the Innovation Center. This could really be a win-win for everyone. Taylor stood there stunned. It was one thing to think about the diner's future, but this was an entirely new level. This opportunity could provide job security for her, her family, and the entire staff at Sunnyside. It could elevate the diner to an entirely new level of importance in the town. But it also came with a lot of pressure. Managing a cafeteria for a major innovation center would require a whole new set of skills, more responsibility than she had ever taken on before. Let me think about it, she said finally. I'm flattered by the offer, but this is a lot to take in. Patrick smiled again. Of course, I understand, but we're excited about the potential, Taylor. Take your time and let us know what you decide. Later that evening, as Taylor sat in her apartment with Mark, she reflected on the day's events. She had always dreamed of more for herself and for Riverbrook, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. The offer to run the cafeteria at the Innovation Center wasn't just an opportunity, it was a lifeline. It would provide her with stability, an income that could support both her and Mark's future. It would allow her to hire more staff at Sunnyside, ensuring that the diner could keep its doors open. It was a chance to truly build something. But at the same time, it was terrifying. It wasn't just about making meals for tech workers. It was about maintaining the spirit of the diner that had made it so beloved by the community. Could she preserve the charm, the warmth, the personal touch that had made Sunnyside so special while running a cafeteria for a large tech company? Mark, who had been playing with his toys on the floor, looked up at her with wide eyes. What's wrong, Zoe? You look like you're thinking about something important. Taylor smiled at her younger brother, feeling a wave of gratitude for him. He had become her anchor, her reason to keep pushing forward. I'm just thinking about some things, Mark, she said softly. Some big decisions. You're always thinking about stuff, Mark said with a grin. But you'll figure it out, I know you will. You always do. Taylor chuckled, the warmth in her heart growing. She had come so far from the days when she was unsure of how to make ends meet. Now she had options. She had choices, and she had a community behind her. The next morning, Taylor walked into Sunnyside with a renewed sense of purpose. She found Mr. Grayson behind the counter, busy as usual, but his face lit up when he saw her. Got some news? He asked with a knowing smile. I do, Taylor said, sitting down beside him. I was offered a huge opportunity. The Riverbrook Innovation Center wants me to run their cafeteria, full-time. They want Sunnyside to be part of the center's growth. Mr. Grayson's eyes widened. That's incredible, Taylor. This is what we've been working toward. What are you going to do? Taylor looked out the window where the morning sun was just starting to rise. It felt like the dawn of a new era, not just for her, but for the entire town. I think I'm going to do it, she said, her voice steady. It's time to take the next step. Well, I'll support you no matter what, Mr. Grayson said. You've earned it. Later that afternoon, Taylor made the call to Patrick, accepting the offer. It felt like a huge weight had lifted off her shoulders, but there was still a sense of uncertainty. This wasn't just a new job. It was a new chapter for Sunnyside Diner, for Riverbrook, and for her. As she finished the conversation, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had made the right choice, and with that decision, the ripple effect of kindness, which had started with one simple breakfast for a stranger, had come full circle. What began as a gesture of compassion had transformed into an opportunity to build something bigger, something that would not only change her life, but the future of Riverbrook as well. The weeks that followed Taylor's decision were some of the busiest of her life. The offer from the Riverbrook Innovation Center had set in motion a series of events that Taylor never could have predicted. Not only was she now overseeing Sunnyside Diner's new role in catering the center's events, but she was also responsible for managing the cafeteria on site. There was no doubt about it. Her life had changed, and it was changing for the better. The diner itself had become an essential part of the fabric of Riverbrook. The small, unassuming diner on the corner of Maple Street had turned into a symbol of resilience and community. It wasn't just a place to grab a quick bite. It was where people came to connect, to share stories, and to take a moment to feel at home. One afternoon, as Taylor walked into the diner, she was greeted by a sight she had never seen before. A large banner hung across the front window that read, "Grand Reopening, Sunnyside Diner 2.0. Mr. Grayson stood beside her, watching her reaction. "We've been doing some upgrades, a fresh coat of paint, a new menu board, some new booths. Nothing too fancy, just a little facelift for the new era." Taylor smiled, feeling the weight of the moment. "It looks amazing," she said softly. "This place is going to be here for a long time, isn't it?" Mr. Grayson nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "It is. And it's not just because of the renovations. It's because of you, Taylor. You brought something special back to this diner. You brought hope." Taylor felt a lump in her throat. She had spent so many years just trying to get by, trying to survive. But now with the Innovation Center in full swing, Sunnyside Diner was thriving. She had created something lasting, not just a business, but a part of Riverbrook's future. As she stepped inside the diner, her eyes fell on the familiar faces of the regulars. Mrs. Wellington, the librarian, was sitting at her usual table, flipping through a book as she sipped her coffee. Mr. Peterson, always with his newspaper, nodded at her as she passed. The retired men were gathered in their usual corner, discussing the latest local news. Taylor could hear the hum of conversation and laughter. This was her world. This was where she belonged. The Riverbrook Innovation Center had grown rapidly, and with it, the town's economy. The jobs created by the center weren't just for tech developers or scientists. They were for everyone in Riverbrook. Local businesses had benefited, and the community had begun to come together in a way it never had before. Hector had become an essential part of the center, overseeing energy storage projects and leading the team on various initiatives. He still stopped by Sunnyside from time to time, always with a smile on his face and a story to share. His life had transformed from one of desperation to one of purpose. And with his new job came a sense of dignity, something he had thought he'd lost forever. But Hector wasn't the only one experiencing change. Taylor had been offered a full-time position with the Riverbrook Innovation Center, managing the cafeteria on site. It wasn't an easy decision, but after much thought, she had decided to take the leap. It was an opportunity she couldn't pass up, one that would allow her to continue building her future and the future of Riverbrook. With her new role at the Innovation Center, Taylor's responsibilities had increased, but so had her sense of purpose. She was helping to shape the future of the town while still keeping Sunnyside Diner close to her heart. She continued to work at the diner part-time, balancing both jobs. She was doing what she loved, serving food, making people feel welcome, and building connections. But now she was also helping to create something bigger, something that would change Riverbrook for generations to come. It was a Saturday morning, and the diner was bustling as usual. The grand reopening had brought in more customers than they could have ever expected. A group of tourists had come in, eager to see the place where Elon Musk had eaten. The mayor of Riverbrook had also stopped by to congratulate Mr. Grayson and Taylor on the diner's success. The town was proud of what they had accomplished, and it felt like the community was finally coming together. Taylor stood behind the counter, watching the familiar faces of the regulars, and she couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had come a long way from the days when she was struggling to make ends meet. Now she had a future, one filled with possibilities, opportunities, and the love and support of her community. As she glanced out the window, she saw a group of children walking down the street, their backpacks slung over their shoulders as they headed to school. She thought about Mark, about how much he had grown in the past year. He was doing well in school, and he had new glasses now, thanks to the generosity of an anonymous benefactor. A sense of peace settled over her as she looked around the diner. She knew that things weren't perfect. There were still challenges ahead, challenges that came with growth, change, and the constant pressure of life. But for the first time, she felt confident in their ability to face whatever came next. Taylor looked up as Mark walked in, grinning ear to ear. "Guess what, Zoe?" he said, practically bursting with excitement. "What is it, Mark?" Taylor asked, amused by his energy. "They're opening a new playground by the school. I can't wait to check it out." Taylor laughed, shaking her head. "That sounds great. You're growing up so fast, little man." Mark beamed. "I know, right?" As the morning went on, the diner continued to fill with more customers. Taylor moved between tables, making small talk, taking orders, and keeping the flow of the diner going. She thought about all the people who had helped her along the way. Hector, Mr. Grayson, even Elon Musk, whose small act of kindness had started a chain of events that had changed her life. She thought about how kindness, in all its forms, had brought them to this moment. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not the money, not the fame, not the success. It was the kindness, the respect, the dignity they had all given each other. It was the little things, the moments when people saw each other, when they took the time to connect, to care, to help. Sunnyside Diner, once on the brink of closing, was now at the heart of a thriving town. And Taylor knew that it had all started with one simple act, a meal for a stranger who had nothing but a few coins to his name. It had started with kindness. And as the sun set over Riverbrook, Taylor knew that the future was bright. It was a future built on connection, community, and the power of kindness. A future she would continue to shape, one meal at a time,